טוב, הגות אבוך, שבוע טוב, הגות אבוך. I'm going to tell tonight story number 38 of the book Shivchei haBaal Shem Tov, which is a compilation of stories collected some 30-something years after the passing away of the Baal Shem Tov, which is historically, chronologically, time-wise, the closest we can get to the Baal Shem Tov, as no stories of the Baal Shem Tov were compiled during his lifetime or shortly after his death. The author, Rav Yosef, speaks to the people who were closest to the Baal Shem Tov, and tonight's story and the next three stories are from Rav Yaakov Yosef of Polonnoye. They're also the beginning stories apparently came from him, but this is like a direct quote of what was heard from him. He was very close to the Baal Shem Tov. He was a big Talmid Chacham, the author of at least 4 books, among them the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, and this is a story of his scarabus. We usually talk about the skashus, the connection of a chassid with his Rebbe, and that is becoming a chassid. A true chassid is the one who is connected to his Rebbe, what we call a mekusher, a connected person. Here we call how he came close to the Baal Shem Tov. Came close to the point that elsewhere it's mentioned that there were people who wanted him to be the next Rebbe. He wasn't, it was the messenger Maggid, but this is how close he became. So how did he become so close? And there is a couple of anecdotes that Rav Yaakov Yosef tells. So the author says, Shamati meharav mafuzam, I heard from this well-known Rav, the Chassid, the pious man, Hakim, the wise man, the learned man, Rav Yaakov Yosef, the author of the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, of the book called Toldos Yaakov Yosef, who was the head of the Beis Din of the community of Polonnoye, when he was the head of the Beis Din of Shaligrot, of another city. Both are in the area nearby Mezibush in Podolia. So he heard about the Baal Shem Tov when he was there, and that the Baal Shem Tov was coming to the community of Mahalif. So he said, as he saw that people were going to him, Esa Gamani, I also will go. Rabbi Yaakov Yosef decided he was going to go to meet this Baal Shem Tov. He wasn't yet a chassid. He was not yet a chassid of the Baal Shem Tov. See, there's 2 meanings of the word chassid. First, the fact that he was a pious man, but he wasn't yet connected to the Baal Shem Tov, and he wasn't learned the Chassidus, the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov. I heard that the early Misnagdim mocked the Hasidim, the followers of the Baal Shem Tov, and called them in a mocking way Hasidim, pious people, and they took that name upon themselves. So he wasn't yet a Chassid of the Baal Shem Tov. So before Shabbos, before the day of Shabbat, the holy day of Shabbat, he went to pray the morning prayer in that community where the Baal Shem Tov was visiting, and he saw the Baal Shem Tov prior to praying. He was smoking his lulki, his pipe. His pipe is referred to as the lulki of the Baal Shem Tov. I'm not sure in what language is lulki. Is that Polish, Yiddish, Russian? Anyway. And Rav Yaakov Yosef did not understand why the Baal Shem Tov is smoking prior to prayer. And during the prayer, the Baal Shem Tov cry, a very heavy cry, a big cry, that Yaakov Yosef had never seen. He says to, this is the exact quote, that in all my days of the of my life, I never saw a cry like that. I understood there was something very special about this crying. And from then on, he would cry on the time of prayer, and he understood it had to be with his fear before the greatness of the Baal Shem Tov. So it influenced the emotional being of Rabbi Yaakov Yosef at the time of prayer. So that's the first connection he has to the Baal Shem Tov, the fact that he sees that he smokes and he doesn't understand the why, and the crying that affects him so much. When the Baal Shem Tov went after this to Eretz Israel in the direction of, there is a couple of stories that the Baal Shem Tov doesn't actually get to go to Eretz Israel. Twice in his life that he tried, and he stopped either in Istanbul or in an island after, on the way to Eretz Israel. However it is, the Baal Shem Tov leaves and eventually comes back. So when the Baal Shem Tov left, Rabbi Yaakov Yosef felt that his mashpia ruchani, that the one who influenced him spiritually, his guide, was gone. He was left empty. Until the Baal Shem Tov came back. So that at that time, Rabbi Yaakov Yosef began going to the Baal Shem Tov and staying by the Baal Shem Tov for an extended amount of time. Until the Baal Shem Tov said to me, says Rabbi Yaakov Yosef, this is a direct quote, that I need to be raised up, elevated spiritually. That I need to be elevated with a handle that turns. It's like levir. It's like the, how do you call the device that we use to lift a car, to switch the wheel? We need to turn a crank and lift it, lever. So this is the mashal, the expression that Baal Shem Tov is using, and that Yaakov Yosef understands. I need to be turned over and be raised spiritually, the way that we raise the carts when we need to change the wheels. But the Alter Rebbe explains this is a mashal, this is an example, this is an allegory of the spiritual work that he needed to do. He takes it upon himself 100%. In this time, when the Baal Shem Tov came back from the trip that he didn't actually get to go to the land of Israel, Rabbi Yaakov Yosef stays with the Baal Shem Tov for about 4 weeks. And then he asked the Baal Shem Tov, when would your highness, Rom Ma'alatot, your elevated one, as he talks to the Baal Shem Tov, when would you begin to elevate me? In other words, this is like what we call in Hebrew the Kabbalah's all. He accepts the yoke upon himself for the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov says, I need to be elevated. When would I begin to be elevated? Like, how can I do the service, the holy service, the way you tell me? And that's the story. That's the beginning. Rabbi Yaakov Yosef would grow indeed to be one of the greatest sages of the Talmidim, of the followers of Baal Shem Tov, and himself a great, well-known Rav in his community. He would have the best in the rabbinic court in the city of Polonnoye, and he would author, he would write books, 3 of which will be published in his lifetime, and 1 after his passing. And the next stories will also speak about him. He's probably the most influential people around Rav Yafe when this book of the Shivchei Baal Shem Tov was written. And so is the story. It focuses on Rav Yaakov Yosef, who came to the Baal Shem Tov and takes upon himself that he needs to be raised like we do, turning a crank to raise a cart or an automobile today that needs to change a wheel. That's the type of spiritual work that needed to be done with him. Shavua Tov and Gute Woche.